Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Life's Unfair, my Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous playthrough series. Today we're going to be continuing on in the Midnight Fane, and as you can see, we're starting off with a little bit of a speed sequence here. The reason being this footage is not particularly interesting, but it is important. It's basically clearing out the entire area kind of around the altar. Basically all the nooks and crannies of this labyrinth-like area, and the way that I really did it was didn't take any skill on my part or any, my party didn't really participate much at all. It was just running around with a Vrolikai and leading mobs back into the hand of the Inheritor and Queen Galfrey. So did take some attempts, as some of these packs were way harder than others to get right. That one that you just saw there with the Hunter Retriever and the Calavacus took a long time to get, even with even with stealth and everything, because they had some nasty crowd control that kept basically destroying Vrolikai. So it looks kind of trivial at 25x speed, but it really it took a lot of finesse to get a lot of these packs back. So when we pick up, it's going to be basically right when we jump into the boss fight here. The boss fight that I conveniently skipped in Darrazand, because I didn't even know it was a boss fight, honestly. All right, here we go. It's going to be a much shorter episode than usual because there just isn't that much content left in the Midnight Fane. It's just the kind of the hardest fights. The boss here, Playful Darkness, and then the fight before Playful Darkness. Probably the three hardest fights. I mean, the boss here and Playful Darkness are very cheesable. Yeah. So the way I cheese it here is, of course, Blade Barrier, right? Using force-based spells that really can't be resisted or anything. Now the issue here is the Blade Barrier was killing my own people, so it did take a lot of attempts to get it so that my people were not stuck in the Blade Barrier and the enemies were. It was a bit of a mess here. But you can see the general tactic, right? I have Blade Barrier up here. The enemies cast Blade Barrier too, if I remember correctly. And their Blade Barrier hurts a lot more than mine. So yeah, you can see, right? It's sitting there ticking down, and then I'm really sorry that, if I get too close to the fight, then he starts hitting my guys. Right now, if you are able to see in the chat log there, my guys are hitting him, but he is not able to hit them, right? He's missing. My guys are hitting for like 8 damage a pop, 25 damage there, right? So this is extremely boring, and this footage is sped up 10x. I want to say 10x or 25x. I'm not sure, but yeah. It's essentially, it's a guaranteed win. Really doesn't take any effort on your part other than getting the position correct, and then you kind of have to pop in the last second to see him, or he doesn't seem to really go down for some reason. And then boom, he goes down, kills everybody around him. But none of my guys are anywhere near him, so no worries on my end there. And yeah, and then after that, it's talking to Galfrey in the hand of the Inheritor, and basically her thanks for me clearing out the Midnight Fane is sending me to the Abyss. She's like, oh, you're getting too powerful. I gotta get you out of Galarian now so I can, re-aggregate my power. You're starting to scare me a little bit. That's kind of what she says here, right? But you can kind of convince her not. So initially she wants to remove you as commander of Crusade, but you can kind of force her to not force her, convince her to not remove you from that position. Also, the book that you picked up in Arilu's lab, if you mention that you have it, she wants it from you, and you have to pass a pretty high bluff check there, right? 39, to convince her not to, that you don't actually have it. Otherwise, she'll take it from you. So don't do that. And then obviously the medallion, right? I didn't give that back to her either. I'm just keeping everything. Playing my cards close to my chest. After that, this is the last area kind of the abyss attached to the Midnight Fane that's left to clear, and this is the area. So this is the worst fight. This was the worst fight for me. The reason being I didn't have Death Ward. I had no Death Ward left, and I didn't want to rest because I didn't know how long it was going to be until I could actually rest without getting corrupted here. So the reason Death Ward would be very useful there, obviously, because all those things have like an area of effect level draining aura, which is a huge pain in the ass. So I'm going to show you guys my fails here just because it's been a while. So yeah, general strategy here was Razor Fiend was the only one with Death Ward, right? The hand that we picked up off Zacharias, the hand of Zacharias gives us Death Ward. Unfortunately, I think I had one Death Ward that I cast on somebody else. I don't know who else I cast it on. Ember had one charge of Death Ward or something left, or maybe nobody had it other than Razor Fiend. And then it was just Razor Fiend's job to keep all the enemies away from the backline so that none of my backline guys got drained. And yeah, it was pretty nasty. The demons in this pack, they hit super hard. They drain levels. Everything is pretty terrible. Everything drains levels. So the undead drain levels and the demons drain levels. And if you're able to rest before this fight, and have Death Ward on all your characters, it'll be a little bit easier because your guys can kind of not be so worried about positioning. But if you don't have Death Ward, it's not gonna happen. You need at least one, obviously, or you need undead characters or something like that. You can see the different things that I tried here. Ultimately, there's really not a lot of room to work with here. You're kind of stuck between the portal and this fork in the road. And whether you go up or whether you stick to the lower path, you run into these enemies. So ultimately, this is the attempt that actually succeeded here. You can see my pets are getting their levels drained into oblivion, but a mix of turn-based mode in real time, having a blade barrier up, and just making sure that we keep the enemies in the blade barrier, right? So you can see in turn-based mode, that's one of the quirks of blade barrier is occasionally it knocks stuff back. And so every time those Nabasu try to walk into the blade barrier, walk to my front line, walk to Razor Fiend, they just get knocked back. So they basically waste their turns. And then every turn I cast, every time it comes to Darren's turn, I just cast another blade barrier. And yeah, I only have to worry about the big demons here, because they're the only ones that can kind of hit Razor Fiend over the blade barrier, but they hit hard and they have a lot of attacks. So it was a tough fight. I think honestly the toughest fight that I've had so far, outside the first few levels, obviously, right, the maze and all that stuff, those were the toughest fights I think I've had, because some of those fights took me like 7 or 8 hours to do. For example, the tavern defense took like 8 or 9 hours or something stupid like that. I haven't really had any fights like that in recent times because I just have a lot more tools available to me here. Yeah. In recent times, what is the longest? So this was one of the longer fights that I had in recent times. And then a couple of fights in the Abyss have been pretty challenging. And yeah, so after that we proceeded over this way. This is the area that I talked about in my last video, where you can like put a rope to go back to another section of the Midnight Fane. You can see my entire party is getting absolutely demolished here by strength draining abilities. Get smacked for 244 damage. And yeah, then we give this thing the old inspect, and yep, level 22, 12 and 2, 1064 health. Yeah, not a nice enemy at all. Has permanent displacement and blur, permanent haste, permanent, basically amazing buffs. It's 94 armor class. Nasty enemy. And here I will show you my attempts at Playful Darkness. So I was trying to figure out how to cheese this thing. Initially, there's another enemy that comes along with it here. So I try to take that guy out first, because he comes by himself. This Death Snatcher here, you can attack him by himself. But if you trigger Playful Darkness, he comes with all the enemies there. So it's best to just take the Death Snatcher out before the fight begins. And then you can deal with Playful Darkness. So you can see during one of my attempts, I kind of figured out that those ghosts, if you have Death Ward up, they basically do 0 damage, and they form kind of a nice wall for you. And Playful Darkness is a melee enemy, the Death Snatcher as well. You can kind of keep them behind that wall of ghosts as long as you don't kill it. So initially I ended up having to rest here. I was basically forced to. And then I went down, right? I took the rope down, and then I tried casting a bunch of, right, you can see I'm casting spells in there. First I tried pulling him to the edge of the cliff with summons and stuff. That wasn't working. Then I tried spamming a bunch of spells in his place, then in the hallway here, and leading him to me, right? I cast Entangle to pull him, but that doesn't work either. It's terrible. It took a long time for me to figure this out. It was pretty rough. But in the end, it does come down to body blocking Playful Darkness. So initially the reason I didn't want to use that strategy initially is because it was a little bit inconsistent. I kept getting hit. Like, Playful Darkness would occasionally maneuver himself or herself in such a way that she was able to hit me over the ghosts. So I'm like, well, we got to try other stuff here, right? And this attempt was actually pretty good. I got him right to the edge of the cliff, and I was kind of able to nuke him. But the positioning requirement on those nukes is really rough. It won't hit most of the time. So this is what ended up working. Positioning right here. And then you can see Playful Darkness running around in the background there. Just make sure you don't hit the ghosts. So I have my entire party standing back, not doing any damage, not doing anything, because if you kill the ghosts, then yeah, you're dead. And then yeah, it's just Darren. Super cheese, 52,000 EXP. Essentially trivial encounter if you do it this way. There's really nothing to it. You can have Nenyo standing up there tanking the ghosts as long as she has Death Ward on, and then you just dare and spam Pillar of Light, and it's over. Playful Darkness is dead. There's a lot of these encounters are unfair. I'm pretty sure they're 100% meant to be cheesed. Yeah, that's it. We're into the Abyss now. I think I'm going to skip my cleaning up our act, kind of, probably, because unless there's any specific things that anyone wants to see, I don't think it's really worth covering. So we're going to jump right into the Abyss. Thanks for joining me. I will see you all in the next one.